Hey everybody, my name is Jeff Wilson. I'm the Assistant Director out at Camp Lake Stevens in Oxford, Mississippi, which is in the northern part of the state. So it's officially spring, and I wanted to take you guys on a hike around camp and show you guys what's popping up out of the woods. But first, I have a question for you. How in the world do you guys think that plants and trees know that it's spring? Alright, so we haven't made it very far on our hike. Today, we are gonna first start off by talking about this group of trees behind me. What these are, they are called eastern redbuds. This tree is a native tree across the southeast. And what's really cool about it is that it is one of the first trees to flower and set its leaves in the spring. If you can hear or get a little bit closer and see, like right up here, there is a bee on that flower. These trees are really important for pollinators in the very beginning as they kind of come out of their dormancy. And so this gives them their very first kind of food for the year to make sure they have a great strong season. So fast forward it a little bit so we didn't have to walk too long. I'll give you a hint on my question I posed earlier. It has nothing to do with the calendar app on the plant's phone. So we are at another cool little stopping point. This little tree right here. This tree, if you notice, it has all these crazy like golden spikes almost. Those golden spikes are actually what are called buds. And buds are how plants and trees grow their new leaves. So all of their growth happens right here. This tree is called an American beech, by the way. It's one of the last trees to flower in Mississippi, or to set out its leaves in Mississippi. But yeah, so all of its growth happens just right here, right at the tips, right at the edges. But here in Mississippi, it's still pretty early in the spring, so there's not just a ton of life happening right now. But it did get me wondering, what does spring look like for your area? Do you live in the desert? Are you in more of a mountainous area? Maybe you don't have a lot of trees. Maybe you have even more trees than we have. So take a look outside and tell me what it looks like. So everybody, we're here kind of close to our wetland area, just a little bit above our lake. And right now we're going to start taking a little bit of a walk off of the trails to see some really cool stuff. So come on. So we are here now at our wetland area. If you look off this direction, we've got all sorts of crazy green plants growing through there. There's a lot of alders and grasses and a tree called a sweet leaf tree, as well as some other really cool big trees. This thing helps filter the water that goes into our lake. But there's some cool plants around here that are starting to pop up that we're going to talk about real fast. Before I talk about this plant right here, this little shrubby tree looking thing right here. Do any of y'all like blueberries? Well, so this tree right here is related to the blueberries. It actually makes them. It's called an Elliott's blueberry. You can see right here, those flowers look just like blueberry flowers, and during the summertime it'll make a lot of really cool blueberries. But we have to beat all the squirrels and the birds to them if we ever want some. But this little wetland area is covered in these things. Another thing that wetland areas are covered in are ferns. And we have a lot of ferns here at Camp Lake Stevens. One really cool one, it's probably the biggest one we have here, is just now starting to pop up. And it's conveniently popping up right below this blueberry tree. So right here is what's called a cinnamon fern. So these things get gigantic. If you can see these really long sticks right here, those are what used to be, these are last year's fern fronds. Instead of leaves, ferns have things called fronds. And instead of buds, they basically pack everything into this circle right here. and then it unfurls, kind of like, it's like a hand opening up almost. But yeah, so this thing will grow up and get to be a really, really large fern. So as we come a little bit farther into our wilderness area, we come across a cool chance that we don't normally get here. This is the top of one of our really tall trees here. It's called a red maple, and it has fallen over, but it gives us the chance to look at some of the cool parts of it. So during the springtime, these red maples put out these crazy, at first red flowers, but then they turn in to these seeds that kind of hang off on these little red strings right here. They're really cool. Maybe one time on a playground or outside you've seen one of these and you played with them. You might not be able to get a picture of that, but they do the little helicopter twirly thing, and this is how the seeds fly away from where they grew. Bit farther back into our wetland area now, and I wanted to talk to you guys about a couple of really cool things that happen back here in the spring. The first thing, and I forgot to mention this earlier, was that it rains a ton in Mississippi in the springtime. This is when we get almost all of our rain for the year. We get a lot during the summer and during the fall, but spring, it seems like it rains every single day for us. Where we're sitting right now is specifically, it's called a watershed. We have 3 watersheds here at Camp Lake Stevens. And what a watershed is, if you could think about a drainage system, maybe like the drain pipes in your town or your neighborhood, this is where all the water goes when it rains. Mississippi, surprisingly, is really hilly in North Mississippi, and so as that rain hits the tops of the hills, it comes all down and it congregates into the valleys, and it flows right on by, right where we're sitting right now, and off into our wetlands where it gets filtered, and then off again into our lake. But there's some cool plants here in the wetlands that really like to only live in these spaces. The first, you see these 2 giant green spikes right here. They haven't opened up yet, but we've got some cool pictures to show you of what they will actually look like. These are called jack-in-the-pulpits. And they love to be in moving water or around wet spaces like wetlands and watersheds. And then we've also got some more really cool ferns right here. These are different from those cinnamon ferns we talked about earlier. These guys, just like the jack-in-the-pulpits, really love water. Well, we've started to make our way back now, but I started to think I would give you guys another hint on why or how trees and plants know that it's springtime. And my hint is it's something that's usually round and yellow and very sunny up in the sky. Well, it's usually up in the sky, but there's been a whole lot of rain here, and yeah, you know. But yeah, you get the picture. So everybody, I have brought you guys to a cool little spot at camp where we are reintroducing some wildflowers and some grasses to talk to you about, finally, just how in the world plants know that it's springtime. And so if you guys remember the 2 hints, it's not their calendar app on their iPhone, and it has something to do with the great sunny ball in the sky. And the third and final hint is it has nothing at all to do with my cat. But so what it has to do with is the plants can tell, so they don't make their own body heat. They're not like animals, but they do rely on the heat of the air temperature and the ground temperature itself. And so what the plants can do is they can tell the temperature is changing, and also that the sun is staying out longer, which is what happens in the springtime. And so when they do that, they're able to start, breaking down their little seed coats and start to grow into some really cool plants. And so right here we've got, if you can see, these tiny little stalks right here. These are little pieces of grass that are going to show up, some native grasses. And then there's all these other crazy ones, like there's probably going to be black-eyed Susans and purple coneflowers and a bunch of really cool stuff like that. So yeah, so that's how plants are able to figure out just exactly when springtime is and when they should start growing. It has to do with the temperature of the ground, which is happening because of the sun, and the sun staying out longer and being able to warm up the space for it. Well, we have made it to our final tree on our hike today. This tree is called a flowering dogwood tree. If you can tell, there's a nice big white flower right here. So what's cool about this tree is that flowers in the spring. You can see these little green dots in the center. Those end up turning into these really bright red berries that birds love to eat. So they're a good food source for them. But also, if you notice, the flower itself is kind of in a cross pattern. So there's a top and a bottom petal, and then a left and a right petal, kind of making that cross symbol. And also there are these little red marks along the sides of the petals. So what's cool about this tree is, in kind of southern folklore, is that this tree was used for the lumber of the cross that Jesus was crucified on. And it's said that these trees used to be like really tall and proud trees, but once they had been used to crucify Jesus, they very quickly became very scraggly and almost knotted looking trees. You can see this one has got all sorts of weird shapes and stuff going on to it, so it could never ever be used again to inflict such harm on the world. Yeah. So thank you guys for coming on our hike. I hope that this has been fun for you guys and enjoyable for you, and I hope that you've learned a little bit about North Mississippi. And I can't wait to hear what cool things are popping up in spring in your neck of the woods.